Go straight in.
Yeah, straight in.
Order, we're now coming on to the next debate, which technically can run till 1804. And I will call Sarah Olney to move the motion. Sarah Olney.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, Mr. Robertson. I'm delighted to have secured this debate on such an important and dynamic topic. The rapid rise of artificial intelligence seemingly knows no bounds. Each week, a new AI tool is launched that drives further change across business, science, the arts, and everyday life. When I first applied for this debate, no one had heard of ChatGPT, but now it's writing speeches for the Chancellor. AI can undoubtedly bring significant advancements across a variety of fields, from aiding medical diagnosis to predicting environmental disasters. AI is transformative in nature. It goes further and faster than humanly possible. It has, quite rightly, been identified as one of the UK's key growth industries, and it is vital that government policy supports digital innovation to position the UK as a real world leader in this field. But just as AI brings many benefits, it also carries significant risk. AI is rapidly permeating the creative sector, creating visual art, prose, music and film at a pace and cost that humans are unable to match. For creatives, the risk of AI-generated material flooding the market gives rise to significant regulatory and ethical challenges. But these challenges can be overcome, or at least mitigated, with well-thought-out and considered policy that balances the legitimate concerns of creatives with the need to foster digital innovation. I'm therefore pleased to bring this debate to Parliament today to discuss those challenges on the record and to give a voice to the millions of creative workers across the UK whose careers will be impacted by AI. We've all seen how quickly AI can redefine industry norms. We need to start exploring how we balance our digital and our creative future. What is the outlook for our musicians, journalists, visual artists, publishers and performers in an increasingly computer-powered world? With the help of the Commons engagement team, I conducted a survey of over 200 creative workers to hear how AI was impacting their work. Many expressed that their work, which they own the copyright for, had been used without their consent by AI companies. One respondent, Richard, noted that in recent weeks, almost 600 of his copyrighted images have been scraped off the internet to train AI platforms, for which he has not received a single penny. Another survey respondent, Henry, said, "Why should an AI company be able to blatantly copy and capture the essence of how I compose music and monetize it for free?" This bypassing of copyright has resulted in creatives feeling that AI is undermining their skills and devaluing the creative process, as well as having a detrimental impact on their income. And the respondents to my survey are not alone. There's currently a significant volume of active legal battles regarding AI and intellectual property going through the courts. Intellectual property rights and copyright laws are fundamental to the success of the UK's world-leading creative industries. Not only do they protect the integrity of original work, but they also provide a revenue stream to ensure creators can make a living from their work. Copyright, therefore, has both an economic and a moral importance for creatives. But rather than looking to ensure current protections are upheld and enforced, last June, the Intellectual Property Office published proposals for an all-out exception to copyright for text and data mining in order to promote AI, with no opt-out for rights holders. Under these proposals, companies across the world would be able to utilise material of UK creatives to produce clean, new material which they could sell and even obtain copyright for without having to gain permission from the creator or pay for a licence. Now, this would see a huge transfer of value from individual creatives to tech companies and strip creatives of the opportunity to refuse or grant permission for the use of their work by AI companies, placing thousands of jobs within the creative sector under threat. These proposals to dramatically widen the text and data mining exception have been met by staunch resistance from the creative community, emphasising not only their economic harm, but also the damage that erosion of intellectual property rights would do to industry as a whole by stunting future creativity. UK Music has referred to the text and data mining exception as music laundering. Equity, the trade union, has said that the proposal could be a huge assault on the property rights of performers. The Publishers Content Forum has said that proposals have disincentivised further investment in high-quality data. And the Design and Arts Copyright Society, who represent visual artists, have warned that this change will have far-reaching detrimental consequences, and they have urged the government to look again at how the policy objectives of supporting AI-driven technologies can be better met without undermining creators' rights. After hearing evidence from some of these groups and many others, the Lords Digital and Communications Select Committee found that the IPO's text and data mining proposals were misguided and advised that they be dropped immediately. I was therefore encouraged to hear Minister Lopez tell the DCMS Select Committee yesterday that she was pretty confident that the text and data mining exception would not be going ahead as proposed last summer. As the Intellectual Property Office falls within his remit, I am hopeful that the Minister can today confirm on the record that the government will not be proceeding with the all-out exception to copyright. This news would be welcomed across the creative sector, but there remains a number of questions to be answered. Why were these proposals ever signed off to begin with? Who asked for them, and what issue were they trying to solve? On what basis was it deemed necessary for such a broad brush approach to be adopted? What evidence is there that this copyright exception would benefit the UK economy in general and the promotion of AI specifically? If these proposals are indeed not proceeding as originally intended, how will the government ensure that stakeholders are thoroughly consulted on alternative proposals to avoid a repeat of last summer? How will Parliament be consulted to ensure that the correct balance between promoting our creative sector and developing AI be achieved? Both sectors are strategically important to the UK. Many of the creative workers who responded to my survey expressed a clear desire for robust enforcement of current copyright protections, with any form of open access text and data mining arrangement being offered on an opt-in basis for creatives. One respondent, Ian, said, if musicians and composers wish to sell their rights to software companies to train their systems, then that is their right. But the default should be that it is illegal to use any music without permission, and it must be enforced robustly. And there does not seem to be a shortage of free data online. Google has this week revealed a new AI tool which is able to generate music from a short textual description, using only work that is not protected by copyright. Other survey respondents advocated for stricter rules relating to copyright infringement and tougher legislation to improve copyright protection of individuals and companies. So what's the solution? How do we balance the legitimate concerns of rights holders with the need to foster an environment that stimulates innovation in AI? The answer to this cannot simply be plucked out of thin air. This needs to be worked out in detail after careful discussion between government, officials and stakeholders from across the full breadth of the creative sector. Like all other sectors, the creative industry will have to adapt to accommodate AI. But this is something that the industry is capable of doing and already making progress with. Creatives have largely accepted that AI-generated content will have its place in the market, and they are already using AI to enhance their work by driving efficiencies, extending their reach to new markets. And it also gives rise to a number of new licensing opportunities to generate value for creatives. But a solid regulatory framework is essential to protect their rights and to ensure that they can partake in value creation and retain control over their work. My team and I have spoken with a number of industry bodies across the creative sector, and I thank them for sharing their insights. Clear to see the passion which drives our creative industries is still well and truly alive. That's not to say the creative industries will not face challenges in the face of technological advancements. AI can operate faster and more efficiently than humans. But AI will never be able to draw on the lived experience of humans. The arts bind us together as a society. They create a collective identity, a shared cultural experience. The connection that is drawn between reader and author, between listener and songwriter, between artist and viewer, that cannot be replaced by a robot. The value, beauty, and joy of the arts is that it reflects the human experience. How sterile and lonely our lives would be if human life were only to be captured on servers and in pixels. How deprived we would be if algorithms served us up only what it thought we wanted to hear and see, and we no longer had the opportunity to encounter something completely different. We must also remember creatives are individuals who often dedicate their lives to their craft. History teaches us that as manual work is replaced by machines, skills atrophy as demand for them falls. People work hard to develop a skill because they hope to earn a living from it. If the economy no longer demands skills in the creative sector, we will see them start to decline. Amy, a composer who responded to my survey, said, "We trained for many years, often at our own expense, to develop and hone our skills in order to share our music. Yet with every week that goes by, we see our music being devalued at every turn. We should be embracing musicians, composers and artists, not trampling over them with the click of a button. If creative industries no longer present a viable career option, we then also risk deterring future entrants to the sector and depriving future generations of creative skills. Another survey respondent, Oliver, noted, AI threatens having a creative industry that continues to breed and create new ideas. We must embrace rather than resist AI developments. Unleashing innovation within AI is central to economic growth, but this objective cannot be pursued at the expense of creativity. We cannot let AI replace the human creators that have built our world-leading creative industry, and nor can AI content be produced off the backs of hard-working creatives without their consent. I urge the Minister to confirm that the Government will not proceed with the text and data mining exception as proposed last summer, and further, I would welcome his assurance that all relevant stakeholders will be properly consulted in the development of alternative proposals to balance the needs of our creative and our digital economy. Thank you, Chairman.
The question is that this House has considered the potential impact of artificial intelligence on intellectual property rights for creative workers. Damien Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Robertson. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship this afternoon. I don't wish to speak for a long time. I'd like to congratulate the Honourable Lady for her excellent opening speech, and she makes some powerful, important points. When I was briefly a minister last year at DCMS, I was Minister for Tech and the Digital Economy, and this issue came within my ministerial remit there, and it does sit between that department and the department that the Minister represents. And I have to say I was surprised then and surprised now with the result of the government's consultation proposals on this. The recommendation made is the most extreme of the options considered. And it's unsurprising when you read the response that on the whole, rights holders complained that the route of creating this general exemption was a bad thing, and researchers and developers who wanted to do it thought it was a good thing. And yet the response seems to completely dismiss the concerns raised by right holders during the view and entirely favours the people that wish to exploit this data for their own benefit. And it's quite clear that people are seeking to extract value from data that other people have created in order to create products and tools from which they themselves will benefit commercially. There are already lawsuits in the music industry between musicians that claim someone else has listened to and copied their work and sought to benefit from it commercially. We could have here a scenario where someone could seek to take, for example, the back catalogue of the Beatles, every track they ever wrote, to learn their techniques and methods, and from that create new music, which was composed in their style, as if they were at their peak recording as a group and writing today, and doing so without the consent of the rights holders of that content, and making money out of it for themselves. And we can easily see how this kind of passing off could occur at scale without any license or exemption or any benefit from the original creators. And we should be concerned about the impact that will have for the creative economy, because many experts believe we are already very close to the day when AI will be capable of creating a new #1 download track or a hit movie even. Yes, I give way.
I'm very grateful to you for giving way. Obviously, that's an excellent example of the Beatles and something that we can all relate to. They've obviously already generated a great deal of their own wealth out of their back catalogue. Do you not think it would be a greater threat to new and emerging artists who perhaps have not yet achieved the reach of the Beatles, that their music could be, their copyright could be breached and their music replicated before they've even had a chance to establish themselves as an artist and the correct owner of that work?
The Honourable Lady is completely right. It has an impact on new artists in two ways. Firstly, they're competing against AI-generated generic music from legendary artists, which they're trying to compete against. But also, this technology could be used to spot new and emerging artists who may be gaining a reputation and popularity to quickly copy their style and techniques by analysing the data and text from their works and creating new works from it as well. So it does open the door to the machines really taking control of the creative process to the detriment of original artists. So I think there is an important point of principle here, which is when people have created works, that they should have the say on how those works are exploited. And for another organisation that sees value in that work to take it, to mine it, and create something from it which they claim is theirs, I think it has a detrimental impact. It would be rather like when radio launched, saying that well, we don't really think we should pay artists any money for playing their music on the radio because the radio creates a new audience for their work. More people are likely to buy records as a consequence, and to charge for music would inhibit the growth of radio and radio stations, which has a huge benefit to the country. Now, we made these decisions as technology has developed to recognise that with technological advances, we have to reward the creators as well, whose work is exploited through these technologies to entertain and engage people, but has a value too. And if we deny them the access to that value, we will be restricting the work and the future work that will come from it. So I think it is very important that there is at least an opt-in or an opt-out. The Intellectual Property Office does cite other jurisdictions in the world where these exemptions exist. It did, in its preamble, it does cite the EU as being one of them. It didn't say in the preamble there are pretty fundamental differences between the way it works in the EU to the way it's being proposed to work in the UK. And the IPO has taken the most extreme option of having these very general exemptions. And I think it is very important when we think about it in the remit of AI, because we can already see how important AI is going to be to shaping people's experiences of content. The best probably live example of AI at work today is in the way people play video games, the way they're designed around the user as they play them, the way content is recommended to people on social media platforms. That is AI-driven recommendation tools, learning from the things people like and engage with, how long they look at things, what they listen to, and pushing new content at them based at that. When we think about the metaverse and virtual reality experiences, that will all be based on machine learning and data mining to create new experiences for people. If people doing that mining can benefit from the creativity of others to create those experiences and create those new films, those new images, and can do so without any recourse or compensation to the original creators, then that's a big power shift. It's a big power shift within the creative economy, away from creators to people that drive systems, away from the artist to the data broker and data miner. And I think as we see the central role that AI will play in shaping people's experiences in the future, it will be a big mistake at this point, I think, to completely cut out the creative and see their data and text content exploited by somebody else without any compensation at all. So I look forward to hearing what the Minister has to say, and I do think this is an urgent issue which does require a new think.
Jim Shannon.
Can I first of all thank the Honourable Lady for Richmond Park for so very well setting the scene, and to the Honourable Gentleman for Folkestone and Hythe for contributing so very well. When I listen to the Honourable Lady and the Honourable Gentleman, I'm very much aware that their knowledge of this subject matter is much greater than mine, but I want to, as I always do, try and give a Northern Ireland perspective to it, because it's the importance of the for creative workers, the creative sector as well. Lockdown has been so incredibly hard for so many businesses, but the forgotten business was that of the creative arts. I'm very pleased and proud to be a member of the Ardsborough Council for some 26 years. Prior to coming here, we had a massive focus upon creative arts, and it's something that we promoted greatly and got much out of, as did our local communities as well. So for magicians and actors, playwrights and theatres were unable to go to work, and the only way of keeping things going was to put that online, those things for people to enjoy and get a small taster of during the COVID crisis we had for some 3 years. But prior to the lockdown, it was estimated that creative industries, which are not quite the same as, but have a strong overlap with the culture and heritage sectors, made up around some 5% of businesses in Northern Ireland, employed around 25,000 people, and accounted for 2.7% of Northern Ireland's total gross value added, contributing some £1,088 million. So this is no longer the case, as lockdown has decimated that sector. So the Honourable Lady has put forward the case today for that, and we look very much forward to what the Minister will say, and those learned gentlemen from Folkestone and Hythe that have spoken, others that will speak, will reiterate the importance of this. Thankfully, lockdown has ended, and yet the threat to the creative industry has not lessened. Indeed, these proposals have escalated the threat, and as the Honourable Lady for Richmond Park has so well put it, these proposals would be damaging to creative workers, such as the music and the publishing industries, as AI companies would be able to use their works without permission or payment. This would lead to a huge transfer of value from the creative industries to AI companies, and also potentially damage the competitiveness of our world-leading creative industries. Thrust of the issue, I'm sure the Minister, as we always will have an excellent response from him, and maybe he can solve our concerns and worries in a way that this meeting will then, as the Honourable Lady hopefully looks for as well, we will have solved some of the issues and concerns that we have. So I look forward to that. I'm given to understand that this is a matter that Government and the Minister are taking seriously, and I believe that to be the case. I noted the ministerial response to the Honourable Member for Richmond Park's question in December of last year, and yet I agree that it is right and proper once more for the importance of this issue to be underlined in this venue in Westminster Hall today, as a follow-on from the question the Honourable Lady put in December and the ministerial response. For any computer system to be able to shred through data and text and be able to circumnavigate the proper methodology is tantamount to, I use the example, a Northern Ireland example, and we all know the product. It's like allowing someone to walk into the Tato factory and steal the ingredients for the world's best crisps, which of course Tatos are, you know, and then say, well, they shouldn't have put the ingredients on the outside of the packet. You know, really, it would be, I'm being a wee bit facetious, but I'm trying to illustrate in a way that we can probably all relate to. The information is there, and yet the ability to walk in and take the specific ingredients without paying is not acceptable and never can be. So I want to conclude, Mr. Chairman, and I'm confident that the Honourable Gentleman wants to follow me. I am on record as being supportive of our creative industry, and this protection must be in place. And I know that the Minister has been listening very carefully. I know that he always responds to the questions that we pose to him, and I'm very, very pleased to see him in his place to respond, by the way, as well. And will ensure that government enhances protection and the only source of income that many creative workers have. A world without art is a world without light, and government must ensure that the light continues to shine brightly from the shores of this great United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Always better together. Thank you.
Conspella.
Thank you, Mr. Robertson. Pleasure to speak under your chairmanship, and I'm mindful of the wind-up taking place, so I'll try and be brief. Can I also congratulate the honourable member for introducing this bill and rightly stressing that there is a balance to be struck. AI will bring huge benefits to our society and indeed to the cultural sector as well, and indeed they have been using it for many years. But it needs to have rules, and what we cannot have is an ideological move towards tearing up rules with a deregulation agenda. Because every industry needs regulations, whether it's the electricity regulations, financial regulations, and that's to the benefit not only of the consumers and obviously of the protection of the workforce, it's also to the benefit of the companies, because they have a degree of certainty to know within which the areas that they're operating between. But colleagues before have looked at some of the technical sides and some of the specific effects on the industry. I also want to put it into a slightly broader context. The music industry, which has quite rightly drawn attention to a number of the difficulties here, is one of the wider cultural industries in this country, and that forms an enormously powerful ecosystem that is important not just in and of itself, not just the economic benefits that it creates, but also the wider benefits to society. And one of the things, because it's certainly not our weather, that makes the UK an attractive place to visit and indeed to work in, not necessarily just in these industries, but also those, particularly the more mobile international talent, who are looking at coming across to. Where are they going to work? Would they rather work in Frankfurt, or would they rather work in London, Manchester, Edinburgh? These are very important considerations for the UK more widely. And also, I think we've got to look at this. It's not just about the technical side. The creatives are the key to this. Why did Disney recently change their chief executive? Because they felt that they were getting out of touch with their creative talent. Rupert Murdoch, a practitioner of realpolitik, if ever there was one, famously said, "Content is king." And that's why bringing those together, because you then form a creative ecosystem which it feeds on itself. That's why so many film companies are coming to the UK, because there is such a wide range of differing talents that they are able to call on. It would be extremely unwise for us to create a deregulated sector where those who are considering where they should locate will say, is my content safe there? Will that be protected there? Will there be other jurisdictions where this would be better protected? That's the sort of issues that we need to be discussing. We need to be focusing on, and we should also recognise, as the honourable member just said, it's not just those at the top. When I was introducing the Agent of Change bill, key to that was nobody started by playing the O2. They started off in small venues and they started to build up. But they need to actually be able to sustain themselves. They need to be able to get an income so they can move from playing part-time in the pub at the weekend to then becoming a semi-professional musician, failing sometimes, and then coming back several times. Not everyone makes it. Others decide it's not for them. But those are the ones who come through, and that's it, which is why we had support from so many major stars for that campaign as well. So I would say to the Minister and to urge him on this. This is important, not just for the audiences, not just for the performers, but actually for the country. If we are presenting ourselves, as we see these adverts at airports about Great Britain, one of the things that makes us great is our creative sector across the board, and we should be very careful about undermining one of the fundamental protections for several centuries, which is the ability to protect one's creative content, to benefit financially, but also to have control over how it is used and to prevent it being misused.
Okay, we now come to the front bench speeches with 5 minutes. John Nicholson.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Robertson, and congratulations for securing this debate. As I was preparing for it, I was thinking about the pace at which artificial intelligence is advancing. All of us, I'm sure, have seen news reports these last few weeks of free-to-use artificial intelligence sites being able to muster at inhuman speeds reams of error-free text or digital images in response to a simple command from a user. Vain social media users, some of them perhaps politicians, were asking bots to touch up their profile photos. Students had been asking AIs to write their university essays, so I thought, why not? I asked an AI to write me a speech about the impact of AI on the creative industries. I discovered that I could tell it what tone I wanted for the speech. So I was offered a choice of poet or philosopher. I went for philosopher. The AI got into its stride. In the past, it wrote, creative tasks such as writing, editing and design were completed by humans in the past, often with the help of specialised software and other tools. Humans, in the past. Almost chilling, Mr. Robertson. My automated pal continued. It was on a creative role and it wanted to talk about creation. I quote, one of the most significant aspects of AI in the creative industry, it said, is the potential to automate, split infinitive you'll notice, many of the creative tasks that were previously done by humans. Back to me again. Now, I'm not sure about you, but creativity, without the creative process, without the humans, just seems so soulless. But on the upside, and this must be music to the ears for some free market zealots, my AI speechwriter continued. This automation of creative tasks can drastically reduce the cost of labour and increase production rates. Not only can AI automate creative tasks, it concluded, but it can also provide valuable insights and analysis that can help inform the creative process. AI-driven algorithms can analyse large amounts of data and provide insights into customer behaviour, audience, trends and market needs. So, it seems it's not just creative jobs at risk. AI has already automated tech lobbyists. Speakers today have already focused on the impact of copyright, whether on established geniuses or musicians who aspire to great careers. Could it be that AI, in this context, is just a euphemism for automated plagiarism? By its very nature and design, AI is derivative. The algorithms driving the AI are used, and many others trawl the web, sucking up music, words, and images, which reimagines, conflates, according to preset guidelines. All of this in a matter of seconds, with little or no regard for copyright and the moral rights of the original creators. What do we risk losing when we take the human out of humanities? If we fail to safeguard the art and livelihoods of our creatives? If we sacrifice spontaneity for speed? What would become of the poetry of Jackie Kay, the paintings of Alison Watt, or the music of Julie Fowlis? Would their art ever have been imagined by the electronic soul of an AI non-being? I think we all know the answer to that.
Chiamura.
Thank you very much, Mr. Richardson and Mrs. Robertson, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. And I do want to start by congratulating the Honourable Member for Richmond Park for securing this vital debate on the potential impact of artificial intelligence on our intellectual property rights for creative workers, and also all the members who took part. And I do just want to observe that before the front speeches, each honourable member was from a different political party, but each has been united in condemning these proposals, and for very good reasons. Because from the Bronte sisters to the Beatles, from Jane Austen to Arlo Parks, from David Bowie to Sam Fender, we are and have always been a country of creators. Over 3.2 million people in the UK are employed in creative sectors, and the government's own figures estimate that our creative industries contributed £115 billion to our economy before the pandemic. It's a great pity then that this government's creativity seems to be limited to finding excuses for their own misbehaviour and their lack of active engagement in our great industries. To the Conservatives, it appears that regulation is a dirty word. But as my right honourable friend, the member for Warley, pointed out, with the right regulation can support and enhance our great industries. The digital age may present a new technological frontier, but our creative industries and the AI sector do not need to be in conflict with each other. Indeed, as the right honourable member for Folkestone and Hythe emphasised, AI can support and has huge potential for the creative industries, but creators need the ability to enforce their rights over their work. And the IPO's current proposals include the introduction of a new copyright exception in order to promote AI, as we have heard. This would remove the need for a licence and cut the opportunity for performers or creators to be remunerated for their work and their talent. Now, the House of Lords Communications and Digital Committee's report on the future of the creative industries called this proposal misguided and asked the government to halt these proposals. Not only would they undermine, as we've heard, the basic principle that our creative industries are based on, but it could enable international businesses to scrape content created by others and use this for commercial gain without payment to original creators here in the UK. And so, as the member for Strangford said, it could very much undermine our competitiveness in this key area. Last week, Rick Ashley, the singer, filed a lawsuit against another musician for the impersonation of the classic hit, Never Going to Give You Up. This is really a charter for the automation and the industrialization of such impersonations. And why the income of our artists, our musicians, and our creators are being risked in this way is something I fail to understand. As part of Labour's industrial strategy, we will shape and regulate AI technologies for the public good, increasing productivity, delivering better public services, and improving quality of life for all. That is how you grow our AI sector, not by throwing creators and artists under a bus. And the UK is already well positioned to benefit from the transformation that AI can bring. But we need to look ahead at future risk, like the potential for opaque AI systems to diverge from our intended objectives. So I'd like to ask the Minister to clarify what steps he is taking to make sure that the next Adele or the next Stormzy do not have their work stolen and sold by an algorithm. For what reason the IPO has not, which is he's responsible for, has not held discussions with the music industry, and will they now do so following today's debate? And what discussions he has had with the creative industries minister to assess the impact of this. And finally, did the IPO make an estimate of how much the proposed exception will contribute to the economy in terms of A, AI sectorial growth, or B, the creative industry's loss? If the Minister is going to say that this is not going ahead, which I very much welcome, he still has to explain why he allowed our important creative industry to languish in such doubt and uncertainty, and to promise that in the future he will take a more active role in ensuring that technological change supports our great industries.
Thank you. Minister.
Well, thank you, Mr. Robertson. It's a great pleasure to both serve under your chairmanship, but also have a chance to put the record straight and answer the very sensible points and questions that have been made today. And can I first of all congratulate and thank the Honourable Member for Richmond Park. If this debate hadn't been scheduled, I would have been hoping that somebody would schedule such a debate in order to give me a chance to come and explain the situation. And and also all those colleagues from across the House, from all parties who've spoken this afternoon. I think we've covered most of the points. It's a particular pleasure, Mr. Robertson, for me to be back in this role as Minister for AI, for the Office for AI, Minister for the Intellectual Property Office, as part of my wider role as Minister for Science, Research, Technology and Innovation, but also having run myself a very basic AI drug discovery business years ago. I mean, very basic. It was really an algorithm with an elastic band connected to it compared to the sort of technologies today. But that was deploying very basic early AI in order to look in the pharmacopoeia of failed medicines, quote-unquote failed medicines, to find those that actually are dream medicines for certain segments of the population and try and reprofile them. So, I mean, I've seen for myself how AI properly deployed in a proper ethical framework can be a huge driver for both drug discovery, but also better medicine, in fact, better public services. But also as somebody who, from a family with a lot of interest in the creative industries. My wife is a musician, artist and writer. My brother works in film. I've published a book. So I'm very aware of the balance that has to be struck here, and as colleagues across the House have spoken about this afternoon. And I think it's fair to say that, as a number of colleagues have, that AI is coming at us as a transformational technology at a pace that we haven't, in government, really had to deal with before. I mean, it's the pace, the halving of technology cycles, the speed at which it's maturing and reinventing itself. It is creating some quite big, interesting challenges for both established industries, new industries that are taking shape, and the creators across all different spheres of the creative industries. And we need to make sure we get the balance right. But let me just, in case the bell goes or some other interruption, make very clear that since returning to office, Minister Lopez and I have met very fast and looked at this, and we have written round to make clear to other ministers that we think these proposals weren't correct, have met with a huge response which should have been picked up in the pre-consultation before the proposals were announced, and that we are looking to stop them and return to office, have a rather deeper conversation with all party group who I met with yesterday, with experts in both houses and with the industry, both creators, platforms, publishers, broadcasters, and those digital intermediaries, to make sure that we don't rush precipitately into a knee-jerk move that's wrong, but we try and anticipate the challenges that are coming and get a regulatory framework in the UK that can keep pace with the pace of the technology and the issues that it raises. So I just want to reassure but the Honourable Lady opposite, who's asked that very specific question and brought the debate, that we will not be proceeding with these. And I will go on to answer the question which I know my Honourable friend opposite, or the Honourable Member opposite, is going to ask, which is, well, how did this happen and what are the lessons from it, which I think are worth... Yes, I'll happily give way.
Was that welcome announcement? I presume it was an announcement. And could he give any idea, and I understand that it's got to go through a number of stages of interdepartmental consultation, any idea when a definitive policy will be produced?
Well, I mean, theses have been written on whether it was an announcement, capital A or small a, but I don't think I could be clearer that the two ministers concerned agree that the proposals that were submitted and approved and published, they were published after I'd left government, I hasten to say, and it was a period of some turmoil, and I think this is, one of the lessons from this is try not to legislate in periods of political turmoil. But the key bit of his question, I think, is when we'll be seeing proposals. My strong instinct is that we should draw breath, take a chance to go through all the feedback from this last few months, and then in consultation, rather more deep consultation with all the various interests, see whether there are some proposals that might command the support that's needed. And I will just say something about one or two of the areas.
And he refers to discussions between him and Minister Lopez, which is enormously welcome. As he's speaking from the dispatch box, is that now government policy?
To be a formal announcement and policy, it has to go through, as he's well aware, as a veteran of these things, government right round has to go through the various committees. That process is underway. So until that is formally confirmed, I can't formally confirm that it is collective responsibility government policy. But when the two ministers concerned are recommending that the proposals have not met with the support that had been expected, I think it's, well, he's just said it's good enough for him. So I hope that'll be good enough for all those listening. I think the real issue, as colleagues have highlighted, is how do we get the balance right in this? And that's why we have identified AI through the National Science and Technology Council, our senior cabinet committee chaired by the Prime Minister, for looking at the big issues that science and technology are raising, which I sit on. It's there to grapple with the really big issues about big geopolitical and big ethical, and let me just finish this point, the ethical issues that some of these technologies are raising. And that's why we are working this year both on a creative industry strategy led by DCNS, but also an AI regulatory strategy, which will set out our approach to regulating AI. Because as the global AI revolution accelerates, we need to be very aware that we're working in a global environment, but we need to set a regulatory framework here that doesn't drive AI creators and investors out. We're a leading AI nation. But we also, I think, have an opportunity to set the regulatory framework in a way that reflects the values that this country is respected for all around the world. And I think the Honourable Lady opposite knows me well enough to know that I'm not somebody who believes that there is a huge regulatory dividend from scrapping all the regulations that were put on the statute book through our membership of the European Union. I think there is a very strong case for clearing up our regulatory statute book. There's an awful lot of deadwood and daft regulations, and it's very unclear. But there is a huge opportunity, as I think I can say, led the charge in my party for saying that actually a lot of the Brexit regulatory opportunities are to set the regulatory frameworks in these new and fast emerging areas, whether it's AI or autonomous vehicles or nutraceuticals or satellites. The creation of regulatory frameworks that command the confidence of both consumers and investors help to position this country as a global testbed for innovation, attract investment, and help us to drive international markets and establish the UK's leadership in standards. So I'm very passionate as Minister for Science, Tech, Research and Innovation that we lean into that piece of leadership, as well as focus on getting rid of some of the daft regulations, like the one that says that coffee machines have to turn off after 30 minutes. I don't know which statutory instrument committee passed that or nodded it through one day a few years ago, but I mean there are some daft regulations, and the truth is our regulatory framework is incredibly complex for both regulators as well as innovators and investors to navigate. So let me just say a few words about where I think the real challenge is. I'll happily give way.
The Science Minister for giving way. I think you will find, actually, that rather than leading the way in AI regulation, both the US and the European Union have already made strides in AI regulation that it would be good for us to respond to. But I wonder whether he inadvertently made an announcement with regard to the Council for Science and Technology, which he said the Prime Minister's chaired. Previous Prime Ministers have chaired it, but it was my understanding that with the new version, it wasn't going to be chaired by the Prime Minister. Is it chaired by the Prime Minister?
Well, unless there's been an announcement made in the last few weeks that I've missed, yes. He has the right to depute the chair of a particular meeting, but the point is it is the senior committee of cabinet charged with dealing with science, technology and innovation. And I'm personally delighted that this Prime Minister reinstated it very early, as soon as he returned, as soon as he took office. Let me just say, I think if you look at the rationale of the Intellectual Property Office last summer as it was presented to ministers in good faith, their argument was that actually if you look at what's going on around the world, there are other jurisdictions that have moved very quickly to put in place similar text and data mining exemptions in the EU, in the US, in Japan and Singapore, structured differently, but all are wider than the current UK exemption. So I don't want anyone to think that we were going out on a massive limb. We were making a move in the spirit of other countries. To your point, yes, I'll just finish this on the point about the EU regulations. And there is an irony here in that we were a very active player in helping to shape some of those EU regulations. And I think the challenge and opportunity for us out of the EU is to take the ambitions that we were pushing when we were in the EU and be able to deploy them more quickly and more agilely, and possibly even more digitally, in a new regulatory framework outside. I'll happily give way.
My friend is right that there are exemptions in other jurisdictions, but not as wide as the one we've set. The most comparable one is Singapore. And while Singapore has many great qualities, it is not a net exporter of music, and nor does it have a creative economy on the scale that we have it. But I just wanted to say as well that what we've been discussing is the Intellectual Property Office's response to a consultation where it recommended the introduction of these measures. Am I right to take from what he said that the government is now minded not to introduce these measures, and therefore, for the time being, the status quo prevails until such other proposal may be considered?
Yes, that's exactly right. And I'll come to some of the lessons from this in a moment, but I'm happy to confirm that. In the consultation that the Intellectual Property Office carried out, a number of consultees did make the case that UK copyright law was too restrictive and was impeding investment in AI, and the point made about text and data mining exemptions in other countries. But I actually agree with my honourable friend, the member for Folkestone and Hythe, who has a distinguished record in these affairs as chair of the DCMS Select Committee and in his career, that the regulation must be proportionate and reflect the economy that you're regulating. And we do have an incredibly strong digital creative industry and non-digital creative industry, and we have to make sure that that is appropriate. We did hear rights holders arguing that no change should be made in the UK, but we also heard not just the big AI and tech firms, but researchers in the life sciences, researchers in the social sciences, making the case to us that many of them were increasingly finding problems not with negotiating with the obvious rights holders when they were clear, universities, but material that was available out on the internet and finding it very difficult to find the person to get the permission from, and that was holding back research, especially when working with multiple rights holders. So I think whilst I'm happy to concede that perhaps these proposals weren't correctly or fully or properly drafted, I do think there are some issues that are still worth pursuing, and I think the Intellectual Property Office was asking the right questions, but I think it's more complex than perhaps the original proposals suggested, and that's why we have committed to continue that consultation. Yesterday I was with the all-party group for the creative industries, and I've instructed the Intellectual Property Office to share their analysis of the consultation findings so that we can sit down together and go through what the issues are that we still need to deal with and get the balance right. And when I say get the balance right, I think, and a number of colleagues across the House have referenced this today, there's clearly a difference between those small and sometimes voiceless creatives, whether analogue or digital, but particularly if they're not in the digital creative economy. Some may want to completely opt out and say, I just never want to see my image turned into an avatar, ever. And I think people need to have the ability just to opt out. People also need the ability to license and to be on the front foot and to negotiate terms, which happens. And I think what the Intellectual Property Office had picked up from both sides, actually, is that there's a middle ground of people who don't have a strong organisational platform for setting out the terms on which they're prepared to have their material accessed, and digital creators who are using intermediary AI technologies to create digitally, which is a legitimate activity, struggle to find and to make that interface work. And I think it's in that space that we need to be looking particularly at making sure we get the balance right. There needs to be a balance, Mr. Robertson, between allowing our creative digital and AI sectors, small, many of them, and extraordinarily dynamic and entrepreneurial. I was recently in Coventry and met a fantastic, almost underground coding community of teenagers who are doing amazing things. So I think we need to be careful to make sure that that creative industry can flourish, but without trampling over the rights of the creators who may or may not want to have their material used. And if they do, then I think it takes us into a second issue, which is fair remuneration, which I've also stood at this box and discussed with the Honourable Member for Cardiff, because there's an issue about rights, but also about remuneration, and how should we make sure that the smaller creators are properly remunerated. And so I think there are issues that we do need to deal with, and I think that's about the balance, as a number of colleagues have said, the balance between rights and responsibilities and remuneration in this world of digitalisation of content and creativity. I think there are two big lessons that I take, actually, from last summer. One is the importance of data, and I've started a conversation with the Intellectual Property Office to ask if we couldn't do more to make sure that we've got better data sets on exactly what the situation is with new emerging revenue streams, new providers, new creators. It's an industry that's moving very fast, and there is a slight lack of data for us to be able to make policy on the basis of which bits of the market are working well and which aren't. And it's creating the market conditions, I think, that everyone can have confidence in is the real challenge for me and for us as a minister. I would just tentatively suggest that there may be another lesson, which is to harness the power of digital technologies and digitalisation when doing consultations. I mean, I'm not quite suggesting that we should have run the AI-ometer over the consultation responses, but it's an important point, actually, that in quite a lot of analogue government processes, harnessing smart intelligence systems may provide us with quite a good way of identifying better clusters of feedback in consultations and actually help to democratise the process of consultation. It's a slightly left field point, but I think what I'm trying to signal is, as we think about these industries, we have to make sure we're not just talking to the same people, but we're driving new methods of consultation to keep up with the pace of the industry. So, Mr. Robertson, I think I've detained you probably and the Hall enough. I hope it's very clear that we've listened, we've heard, we're absolutely committed to making sure we get this right, whilst we do think that the government needs to be on the front foot in anticipating getting the regulatory framework for this right. Those proposals have clearly elicited a response that we hadn't heard when they were being drafted. We're taking them seriously. The Minister at DCMS and I have made clear we don't want to proceed with them, and that we will engage seriously cross-party with the industry through the IPO and ourselves to make sure that we can frame, in due course, when needed, some proposals that will command the support that they require.
Okay, thank you. Sarah Olney to wind up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Robertson. Thank you very much for your excellent chairing of this debate, which is a pleasure to wind up. I'm delighted to hear from the Minister that he plans, that he has committed as far as he is able to withdrawing the current proposals, and also that he will be consulting widely, including with all parts of our creative industry, before putting forward any further proposals, and I'm sure everyone in this room looks forward to hearing what those are. It's been perhaps a reflection of why our creative sector is such a stronghold of the British economy. We've been debating this cutting-edge technology in the ancient surroundings of Westminster Hall, and I think it really points up, very much the context and the source of so much of our uniqueness in British creativity and across all parts of the UK as well. I'm particularly grateful to the member for Folkestone and Hythe for bringing his expertise and experience in this area, which really contributed excellently to the debate, and also to the member for Ochil and South Perthshire and I found it rather chilling, actually. The phrase that sprung out to me was software and other tools. Presumably those other tools are paintbrushes and musical instruments, and it really does highlight, that we cannot allow our human input and our skills to be swallowed up by AI, and as he said, the very derivative nature of what we will be served up as a result. So I'd like to thank everybody who participated in the debate. I want to thank all of those groups, all those industry sector groups who came and spoke to me and to my team about all the issues that they're experiencing, and particularly those artists, musicians and performers who responded to the survey, because it's been incredibly useful to really understand this issue. And I want particularly to thank Megan Harding in my office, who brought all this together and really, really helped me with this today. So thank you very much. Thank you.
The question is that this House has considered the potential impact of artificial intelligence on intellectual property rights for creative workers. As many of that opinion say aye. The contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order, order. The sitting stands adjourned.
The proceeding has ended. 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 The proceeding has ended.